I travel a lot for work, conferences, client meetings, product launches. I'm in a new city almost every other week, and hotels start feeling like white-walled boxes after a while. Sometimes, when I get tired of room service and watching muted news channels, I open Tinder. Not always to hook up, honestly. Sometimes it's just to talk, to meet someone local, get dinner, feel human for a bit. That week, I was in Seattle. It had been raining off and on since I landed. I had meetings during the day, and by the third night, I was bored. So, I opened Tinder, swiped around while eating a bland sandwich from the lobby cafe. Her profile came up, Ava, mid-20s, short black hair in her one picture, blurry, like it had been zoomed in from a distance. No bio, just Seattle native, free spirit, 420 friendly. I normally skip vague profiles, but something about her caught my attention. Maybe the timing, maybe just boredom. We matched within minutes. She messaged first, something short, "Here for work?" I said yeah, told her I was staying at a hotel downtown. She asked which one. I told her. I didn't think much of it. People ask that kind of thing all the time, trying to figure out if it's nearby. She said she was free the next night, around 9. I said cool, let's meet for a drink. She said she'd text me before heading over. The next night, I waited in the lobby for a bit, checked my phone now and then. Nothing. I messaged her once around 9:15. "You still coming?" No reply. By 9:45, I figured she bailed. Whatever. I'd half expected it. I went back to my room on the 9th floor, showered, watched some late-night cooking show until I felt sleepy. I remember glancing at the clock, 1:58 a.m. when I turned off the TV. The room was dark, heavy rain tapping against the window. I was drifting off when I heard something. A faint noise. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. It wasn't the rain. It was too slow, too deliberate. It sounded like someone tapping on my hotel room door. Not knocking, just tapping, like a fingernail or maybe a key, gently hitting the wood. I sat up in bed, not moving. I waited, listening. Nothing. Maybe I imagined it. Could have been the room next door. Then my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. No name, just the message. "Why didn't you answer the door?" I stared at it. I hadn't told Ava my room number. I hadn't even told her what floor I was on. I felt my mouth go dry. My heart was thudding in my ears. Another message came in, "Don't worry. I saw you already." I didn't move for a few seconds. Just sat there, trying to process. My first thought was someone was messing with me. A prank. But no one knew I was here except coworkers, and none of them would do this. I got out of bed, slowly walked to the door. The peephole was dark. No movement. I didn't open it. Just stood there for a full minute. Nothing. I backed away and picked up the phone, called the front desk. I kept my voice steady, told them someone might have come to my door. A woman. Asked if they could check. They said no guests had been logged as visiting my floor that night. All access to the guest room levels required a keycard. Elevator, stairs, everything. They offered to send security up to check. 10 minutes later, someone knocked, properly this time. It was a security guard, mid-40s, tired eyes, flashlight in hand. I opened the door a crack and he asked if I'd seen anyone. I said no, just heard something weird and got some strange texts. He nodded like it wasn't the first time he'd heard something off. He walked up and down the hallway while I stood at the door watching. He checked the emergency stairwell at the end of the hall. Nothing. He told me to lock up and let them know if anything else happened. I asked about cameras. He said they had footage, but only in the elevators and lobby. The next morning, I went downstairs and asked the front desk again. I wanted to know if they found anything. The woman said they checked the elevator footage from around 2 a.m. A woman had come up to my floor. She didn't use a keycard. She followed a couple in as the doors were closing, just slipped in behind them. No bags, no coat, just standing there quietly. She got off on my floor, walked around for a bit, paused in front of several doors, then stood outside mine. For over 10 minutes. I asked if they could show me the footage. They said no, for privacy reasons. but they described her short, black hair, hoodie, jeans. Could have been anyone. I asked if they knew her, if she was a guest. They said they checked all the room logs and keycard records. No one registered with that description. No extra keys signed out. They didn't call the cops. Said nothing happened. Technically, no break-in, no damage, no threats. Just a weird situation. The guy at the desk even joked maybe it was someone looking for the wrong room. When I got back to my room, I opened Tinder. Her profile was gone. She'd unmatched me. Her messages were gone. Only thing left were the 2 texts from the unknown number, still on my phone. I tried calling it. Dead line. No voicemail. I copied the number and searched it. Nothing came up. No social media. No profiles. Nothing. I thought about reporting it anyway. I really did. But what would I even say? I gave a stranger my hotel name. She didn't do anything. Really? Just stood outside my door. The hotel brushed it off. I flew back home the next day. I never used Tinder on work trips again after that. Not even to chat. And now, every time I check into a hotel, I never mention the name online. I don't tell anyone where I'm staying. I check the peephole before opening any door. I keep the latch on, even during the day. I don't know who she was. Maybe just someone bored and looking to scare people. Maybe unstable. Or maybe it was just someone with a weird hobby, finding strangers online and creeping close, just to see if they notice. But that night still sticks with me, because she knew where I was. She knew what door was mine, and she was standing there in the dark, while I slept just a few feet away. We met on Tinder in early February. I wasn't expecting much, just the usual chats that go nowhere, but she surprised me. Her name was Alina. She was smart, quick with sarcasm, into books and photography, and her photos looked like she actually smiled because she wanted to, not because she was told to. We messaged for a few days, then met for coffee. The first date turned into a second, then a third. It felt easy, comfortable. She had this calm confidence about her that pulled me in. We weren't official or anything, but I could see it heading there. She knew how to carry a conversation without forcing it. She laughed at my stupid jokes, asked follow-up questions about my job, and even remembered my sister's name after I mentioned her once in passing. That kind of attention made it feel like she was really present. For once, I thought Tinder might have actually worked for me. Then one evening, I came home after a long day at work. I was tired, hungry, hadn't even taken off my shoes when I saw her, Alina, sitting on my couch like it was the most natural thing in the world. She had one leg tucked under her, scrolling through her phone, totally at ease. My apartment was dim, just the hallway light behind me. It took me a second to even react. She looked up and smiled, not like she was caught, but like she was proud of herself. "I wanted to surprise you," she said casually, like this was something we'd agreed on. I asked how she got in, already feeling a tightness in my stomach. She shrugged and pointed toward the windowsill near my door. "Your spare key, under the flower pot." I never told her about that key. Not once. I never mentioned hiding it there to anyone. I don't even remember her ever being outside near that area. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to process. I should have asked her to leave. Should have told her that what she did was not okay. But something about the way she looked at me, calm, collected, like she knew exactly how I'd react, threw me off. I didn't want to make it a thing, so I played along. I told myself she probably just got lucky. Maybe saw me use it once. Maybe I mentioned it and forgot. I made dinner. She stayed. We watched a movie, and she acted like it was the most normal night in the world. I didn't sleep well. I kept replaying it in my head, her sitting there, waiting for me, letting herself in. Over the next week, it got worse. She started showing up unannounced. Once it was at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was half asleep, about to shower before a video call for work. She stood there holding 2 coffees and some croissants, smiling like we lived together, like this was something we did. Another time, I was in a meeting, headphones on, talking to my manager. She just walked in, I hadn't even heard the door. She waved, sat on the couch, and started flipping through a magazine I didn't even know I owned. I pretended I didn't see her and focused on my screen, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't say anything to her directly about it. I kept thinking maybe if I just waited it out, she'd back off. That maybe she was just overly enthusiastic. But her timing always felt off. Too precise. Too calculated. She always came when I was alone. She never texted to ask if it was okay. She just arrived. Like she had a schedule I wasn't part of. After that week, I moved the spare key. Didn't even think twice about it. Put it in a drawer inside the apartment. That night, for the first time in days, I slept without waking up every hour to check the door. The next day, I got a text from her. Just one sentence. "Why'd you move it?" I didn't reply. I stared at it for a long time, then blocked her number. I blocked her on every app. Tinder, Instagram, even LinkedIn. I felt guilty about it for maybe half a day, but then I remembered that moment, her on my couch with that smile, acting like it was normal. A couple of days went by. Nothing happened. No texts, no calls. I figured maybe she got the message. 2 weeks later, I was leaving work. I walked across the lot to my car like usual. It was chilly out, kind of gray, and I was in a rush to get home. When I got to my car, I noticed something on the windshield. A folded piece of paper tucked under the wiper blade. At first I thought it was a flyer, or maybe a ticket, but when I opened it, my stomach dropped. "You don't have to hide. I'm still here." No name, no number, just that. Handwritten, clean handwriting, the kind you'd see in a thank you card. I looked around the lot, empty, quiet, just a couple cars down the row and the hum of the street beyond the fence. I didn't know what to do. Call the police? And say what? That someone I dated for a few weeks left me a weird note? I didn't sleep much that night. Every sound outside felt louder. Every creak in the floor made me sit up. I kept thinking about how long she might have been watching me. If she was following me. If she had ever been inside without me knowing. The next morning, I took the day off work. I packed everything I could and stayed at my friend's place across town for the weekend. Told him I was dealing with plumbing stuff. I didn't want to explain. Monday morning, I called my landlord, said I needed to break the lease early. I offered to pay the penalty in full. No arguments. I moved out the following Friday. Found a small one-bedroom across the city. No one knew the address except my sister and my office. I didn't update any of my socials. I didn't post anything for months. For a while, I jumped at shadows. I'd look over my shoulder while walking to my car, double-check the locks, leave a light on every night. I even stopped using dating apps altogether. I'd delete and reinstall Tinder sometimes, just out of habit, but I never made it past the setup screen. I never saw Alina again. No more notes, no more texts. But for weeks after I moved, I kept expecting her to find me somehow. To be there when I came home. That same calm smile on her face. Like she never left. Like she belonged. It didn't happen. Nothing happened. But it changed how I live. I still don't keep a spare key outside. I stopped telling people small details about my routine. I don't bring people to my place until I've known them for months. I listen to that gut feeling now. The one that told me something was off the moment I saw her sitting on my couch. I've learned that someone doesn't need to break in or shout to be dangerous. Sometimes, they just let themselves in, quietly, like they were always meant to be there. We had been talking for maybe 3 weeks before he invited me over. Not constantly, just on and off, mostly evenings. He wasn't pushy, and that made me let my guard down. His texts were calm, casual. He said he wasn't into hookups, said he liked cooking, reading, and old movies. He came off normal, boring, even, and boring felt safe. I didn't have a great reason to say no when he invited me to his place. He said he wanted to make dinner. Something simple: pasta, salad, a bottle of wine. I remember he joked that his cooking skills weren't chef level, but better than average. He sent me a picture of the ingredients laid out on the counter like he was trying to prove he wasn't lying. I got there around 7. He lived in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. Row of townhomes, newer builds, very clean looking from the outside. His unit was on the second floor of a duplex. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed was how spotless everything was. Not just clean, empty. The furniture looked barely used. No clutter, no photos on the walls or on shelves. Nothing personal. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a rental staged for a listing. He smiled, seemed relaxed, friendly. There was soft music playing from a speaker on the kitchen counter, a candle burning on the table. The pasta was already boiling. I tried to shake off the weird vibe. Maybe he was just a minimalist. Maybe he liked things neat. Not everyone keeps pictures of their mom on the wall. Dinner was fine. Nothing amazing, but decent. He poured the wine generously and kept the conversation going. Work stuff, music, random little stories. I don't remember half of what we talked about, honestly. I kept zoning in and out, distracted by how sterile the place felt. The fridge had one magnet. No notes, no menus, no clutter. The bookshelf had exactly 5 books spaced out neatly. One of them was turned backward for some reason, spine hidden. I didn't ask why. I stayed longer than I meant to. The wine made me feel fuzzy, and the soft lighting made time feel slower. At some point, I got up and asked where the bathroom was. He pointed down the hall and said, "Past the spare room, on the left." That's all he said. The hallway was dim, carpeted, no pictures, no decorations, just plain white walls. I found the bathroom easily, but as I stepped out and turned back toward the living room, I noticed a faint glow of light coming from under a closed door across the hall. Something about it pulled at me. I don't know why. It didn't look special, didn't make a sound, but the light was warm, like someone had a lamp on in there, and something just didn't sit right. I knew I shouldn't have, but I stepped closer and gently pushed the door open. It wasn't a spare room. It looked like someone else lived in there. The air was warm, slightly perfumed. Against the wall was a white vanity covered in makeup, brushes, nail polish. On the floor were rows of high heels and boots, perfectly aligned. The closet door was open and full of women's clothing. Dresses, jackets, all different styles. On the dresser were framed photos, not of one woman, of several, different faces, different backgrounds, different settings, all smiling. None of them were me. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I backed out of the room slowly, quietly, trying not to touch anything. My chest felt tight. My mouth was dry. I turned to head back toward the living room. He was already standing in the hallway. He wasn't smiling anymore. He didn't say a word, just stared at me. His face was completely blank. No anger, no shame, just still. I didn't say anything either. I couldn't. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My body was frozen for a second too long, and then something inside me snapped into motion. I mumbled something. I don't even remember what. Maybe I should go or thanks for dinner. My voice cracked. My legs felt weak, but I started moving, heart pounding harder with every step. He followed me, not close, just far enough to make it worse. Slow steps behind me as I walked to the door, grabbed my jacket, and opened it with shaking hands. He didn't try to stop me. He didn't say anything. He just stood in the doorway, arms at his sides, watching. I didn't slam the door. I didn't run yet. I forced myself to walk down the steps like everything was fine. But once I hit the sidewalk, once I was out of sight from the door, I took off. I didn't stop running until I reached the gas station at the corner. I stood there under the bright lights, heart racing, legs shaking, trying not to cry. I looked around to see if he had followed me, but I didn't see him. I called a friend, lied and said I had a panic attack, and had them come pick me up. When I got home, I blocked his number, deleted the app, and just sat on my couch for what felt like hours. I couldn't stop thinking about that room. Those pictures, the makeup, the clothes, the shoes, the soft lighting. It wasn't a guest room. It wasn't someone else's room either. That apartment didn't look like it was shared. There were no signs of another person anywhere else in the house. Only in that room. I never found out who those women were. I didn't report it. What would I even say? That I went to a guy's apartment, saw a room full of women's stuff, and got a bad feeling? It didn't feel like enough. I kept telling myself maybe he was just weird. Maybe he had an ex who left her things. Maybe he was trying to start a fashion blog. Maybe, but I knew none of that explained the silence, the way he stared at me, the way he stood there and watched me leave without blinking. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gotten up to use the bathroom. If I'd stayed longer. If I'd had more wine. If I had believed the lie of that perfect, too clean apartment. And sometimes I wonder if those women in the pictures ever left. I never matched again after that. Never opened that app. I don't go to people's houses anymore. If someone can seem that normal, that boring, and still keep something like that hidden, then no one is safe. No one. He offered to pick me up, said he lived on the other side of town but didn't mind the drive. His profile was normal enough. Some pictures with his dog, a couple selfies in his car, one at a barbecue. Nothing flashy. His bio said he liked hiking, old school rap, and coffee over cocktails. He was maybe early 30s, messaged with proper grammar, no weird emojis. I wasn't even looking for anything serious, just someone decent to hang out with. We'd only talked for 3 days, but the conversation felt easy. I remember telling myself to just meet him at the place. But when I mentioned that, he said something like, "Let me pick you up. No pressure, just easier." And instead of pushing back, I agreed. I still don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to seem rude. Maybe I didn't want to come off paranoid. Stupid. I know. He pulled up right on time. Gray car, Honda, a little older, tinted windows. He was wearing jeans, a black t-shirt, and a chain. He looked like his photos, more or less, but something felt different in person. Not bad exactly, just different. He smelled strongly of cologne, sharp and sweet, like he'd sprayed too much to cover something else. There was also a faint smell of weed in the car, stale, like it had been smoked hours ago. He was overly friendly, cracking jokes, using my name a lot, acting like we already knew each other. It made me uncomfortable, but I laughed along, told myself it was just nerves. I said I thought we were getting coffee nearby. There was a nice cafe just 10 minutes away. He smiled, said, "I know a better spot. Little further out, less crowded." I paused. I actually paused, looked at him, thought about saying no, thought about getting out of the car. But then I heard myself say, "Okay." We pulled out of my neighborhood, and I watched the houses disappear in the side mirror. Within 5 minutes, we were on the highway. I tried to make small talk, work, music, weather. He answered in short bursts, tapping his fingers on the wheel, looking at his phone at every red light. I asked again where we were going, and he said, "It's past the ridge. Real chill place. You'll like it." The ridge is a stretch of small hills just past the edge of town. Beyond that, it's all rural wooded areas, farms, old dirt roads, the kind of place where people own land and fences are made of barbed wire, not somewhere you just swing by for coffee. 15 minutes turned into 30. The roads got narrower, no sidewalks, no lights, the occasional broken mailbox or rusted street sign, trees lining both sides. I started watching the cell signal on my phone. 1 bar, then none. I told him to stop, just set it flat. Stop the car. He smiled again, didn't slow down. Relax. Something about his tone made my stomach twist. It wasn't casual. It was tight, like he was trying to keep me calm, but only because he didn't want a scene. I looked at the door. My hand was already on the handle before I realized it. I tried to be subtle, but he noticed. That's when he pressed the gas. Not flooring it, just enough to make it clear he wasn't stopping. That's when I stopped thinking. The car was coming up on a bend, a soft right turn. He wasn't going too fast, maybe 30, but it was enough. I pulled the handle, shoved the door open, and jumped. I don't remember the landing clearly. I know I hit my elbow first. My shoulder scraped the gravel, and I rolled, face first, into the dirt. My jeans tore at the knees. My hands burned instantly. There were sharp bits, rocks, maybe glass. I couldn't tell. My ears rang. For a second, I thought I was going to throw up. I didn't look back. I ran. The trees weren't far. I cut into them, slipping between branches, brushing through low, dry leaves and dead pine needles. I could hear his car screeching behind me. Then a door slamming. He shouted something. Maybe my name. Maybe just, hey. I didn't stop to figure it out. I crouched behind a fallen tree trunk, heart slamming, trying to breathe as quietly as I could. My hands were bleeding. My knee was throbbing. I could still hear him walking around nearby, snapping twigs, his voice low and angry. It didn't sound like he was looking for me to help. He sounded mad, like I'd embarrassed him. I stayed there for at least an hour, maybe longer. I waited until I didn't hear his voice anymore. Didn't hear the car, just insects, leaves rustling in the wind. At some point, I started walking, limping, really. I had no idea where I was going, just downhill. I figured eventually I'd hit a road or fence or something. I saw the gas station from a distance, lit up like a lighthouse. Big bright signs, one car parked out front. I was limping so bad by then that I probably looked drunk or injured. The clerk inside was this middle-aged guy with long hair. He stepped out when he saw me and asked if I needed help. I didn't even answer right away. I just leaned against the ice chest outside and started crying. He brought me inside, gave me water, let me use the phone. I called a friend from town, the only person I could think of. She came to get me an hour later. I didn't explain the full story, just said it was a bad date. I showered at her place, scraped off the dirt and blood. My arms were shredded with little cuts. My knees were purple by morning. My shoulder was swollen. I iced it with frozen peas. I didn't call the police. I didn't even know his full name. I hadn't saved his number. We'd only talked on Tinder. When I opened the app that night, his profile was gone. Deleted. Vanished. All our messages disappeared with it, like he was never there. I kept checking for weeks, searched every name I remembered, scrolled for hours. Nothing. I never told my parents, never filed a report. I didn't want to sit in a station and say, yeah, I got in a car with a stranger from an app. I didn't want them to look at me like I was stupid. I already felt stupid. I already hated myself for ignoring the red flags, for choosing politeness over safety. It changed how I dated after that. I stopped using Tinder, stopped meeting people alone. I'd lie and say I was bringing a friend. I'd text my location to 2 people before going anywhere. I started carrying a little knife in my purse, pepper spray in my pocket. I still think about that night. What would have happened if I hadn't jumped? If I'd waited 5 more minutes? If I'd let him drive me further? If the road had been too fast to open the door? Sometimes I hear people say, well, nothing actually happened to you. And technically, they're right, but that's only because I didn't wait to find out. I matched with her on a Wednesday night. Her name on the app was Mara. She looked mid-30s in the photos, a bit older than the usual matches I got. But she had something about her, classy, calm, mature. Her bio was short and kind of generic. Love music, long hikes, deep talks. Just looking for something real. I remember thinking that sounded nice. At the time, I had just gotten out of a months-long situationship, so something real felt like what I wanted too. We started chatting. She messaged first. She asked simple questions: what I did for work, where I lived, what I liked to do in my free time. She told me she lived just 15 minutes away from me, in a neighborhood I knew well. She said she worked in marketing, freelance, so she had a flexible schedule. I asked about her hiking spots, and she mentioned a few local trails that weren't too popular. Nothing seemed off. By Friday, she suggested we meet. She picked a quiet little bar downtown. Not a dive, but not fancy either. I'd been there once before. It was a decent place for a first date. She said 7 p.m. When I got there, I was a little early, maybe 10 minutes. I grabbed a seat at a table near the side wall where I could see the door. The place was about half full. Groups of friends, a few couples. I ordered a beer and waited. I kept checking my phone and refreshing the app. just in case she messaged something last minute. At around 7:10, she walked in, or at least, someone did who looked kind of like her pictures. But I didn't recognize her at first. It was her face, mostly, but something felt wrong. Her photos showed someone mid-30s. The woman who walked in looked closer to 50. Still put together, still attractive in a way, but clearly older. Her skin had more lines, her eyes looked heavier, and her hair was shorter and duller than in the photos. She came straight over and said my name with a big smile, like she'd known me for years. She sat down across from me and immediately said, "I know, I look a little different. Those pictures are a few years old." I laughed awkwardly, nodded. I didn't want to be rude, so I said it was fine, even though it felt weird. My instinct was to make the most of it. Maybe it would still be a good night. I mean, people age, filters exist. Maybe she was just insecure. But things kept feeling off. From the moment we started talking, she was way too forward. She kept touching my arm, leaning in too close, laughing too loud at things that weren't jokes. She asked really personal questions about my finances, my apartment, whether I lived alone. She said she loved how honest I was, even though I wasn't saying much. I mostly just nodded, took small sips from my drink, and tried to act normal. The whole time, she kept glancing over at the door like she was waiting for someone. About 20 minutes in, she excused herself to go to the bathroom. She got up quickly and didn't take her purse. I sat there, staring at my beer, trying to figure out how I felt about the whole thing. I was uncomfortable. Part of me wanted to just pay the bill and leave. Another part thought I was overreacting, being judgmental. Less than a minute later, a man walked straight to my table. I remember everything about how he looked: bald, heavy build, thick neck, wearing a black t-shirt with a faded logo on the chest. He didn't smile, didn't hesitate. He pulled out the chair across from me and sat down like he had every right to. I stared at him. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't ask if I was me. He just leaned in, close. His voice was low and rough when he spoke, like he'd been smoking for decades. He said she told him I'd been threatening her, that I needed to come outside and deal with it. I was stunned. I said no, that wasn't true, we just met. But my voice came out small and unsure, and he got louder. Said she told him everything. A few heads turned. I stood up, slowly, backed away from the table. I said I didn't know him, didn't know what he was talking about. At this point, the bartender was watching us. I saw him signal to someone behind the bar. The guy didn't move, didn't yell, but he didn't back down either. He just stared at me, like he was daring me to say something else. A bouncer showed up then, big guy in a dark button-up, and asked if there was a problem. I told him I didn't know the guy, that we weren't together. The bouncer didn't argue. He asked the bald guy to leave. The guy stood up without saying another word and walked out of the bar like nothing had happened. I sat back down for a second, trying to make sense of what just happened. I waited for her to come back from the bathroom. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. She never did. Eventually, I flagged the bartender and asked if he could check if she was still there. He sent someone to look. The staff came back and said the women's restroom was empty. I checked my phone, opened Tinder. Her profile was gone. Not unmatched, gone. Like it had never existed. I left the bar not long after. I kept looking over my shoulder all the way to the parking lot, even though I didn't see the guy again. My car was fine. I locked the doors the moment I got in. Later that night, I kept thinking through the whole thing. The photos, the fake age, the personal questions, the glancing at the door. Then her disappearing, the guy showing up. It wasn't random. It couldn't have been. That guy didn't just happen to be there. I started wondering what the plan had been. Was he going to drag me outside and rob me? Beat me up? Was she going to follow? Were they going to try to take me somewhere? Was it blackmail? Some kind of trap? Maybe they wanted to get me on camera admitting to something. Or worse. I don't know. I'll never know. I reported the profile to Tinder, but it was already gone by then. I didn't have her real name, no number, nothing but a vague face and a weird memory of a night that could have gone way worse than it did. For weeks after, I kept checking over my shoulder when I went out. I deleted Tinder a few days later. I haven't gone back on since.